Have you ever thought of buying a franchise or currently own one or many? If so, this podcast is for you. Welcome to Franchise Euphoria, the podcast created and hosted by franchise attorney Josh Brown for the sole purpose of helping people find success through franchising.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Franchise Euphoria. Thank you for tuning in, and I am just so thrilled today to have John Quick on the show. John is a public relations, marketing, new media, programming guy who I am proud to call my friend, who I've gotten to know over the last several years, done business with, and really just enjoy talking to. And I think for purposes of this episode is going to be able to provide a lot of good insight and information on the power and importance of marketing and marketing in a local way. So, hey, John, welcome to the show.
Glad to be here, Josh. I mean, I don't know, you kind of pick your friends a little, not very carefully, I guess, huh?
Yeah, I'm not too picky. I
appreciate the kind words, and we've really built a friendship up over the past, I think, 5-6 years now, both on a business basis. And I have written down, I was going to say in this interview, as we talk about building a franchise and necessity of marketing, franchise or a business, that I really learned from a good friend of mine, something that I've adapted, and I tell people, it's called build, dream, and grow. Where did that come from? Do you know? Somebody uses that.
Now, John, you don't need to plug me on my own show. I can do enough of that myself. But
that's what I want. My point is this, Josh. When we first met, you were a successful attorney and you wanted to do something different, and you had these dreams and you had these different ideas, but you didn't rush into anything. Think of the hours that we talked, and I've always admired you sincerely now, because build, dream, and grow is exactly what you did, and it's almost ironic that it's your slogan now. And I think that's what this business of business is all about. Build, dream, and grow. Or is it dream, build, and grow?
Dream, build, and grow. But either way, yeah. I totally appreciate your sentiment. And, the reality is, one thing that you helped me with so much was the idea of, hey, you don't just come up with a marketing slogan overnight. Let's think about this. I think your whole concept at the outset was, we're going to sit in a room together for a couple hours and we're going to essentially throw a bunch of things up against the wall. And we're going to throw, it's like an idea dump kind of thing, where you're just going to throw everything up against the wall and let's figure out what works for you. Because, a lot of people mistakenly think that marketing is all about, let's just put something catchy out there. When I think you and I both know that good marketing is when you get to the essence and the core of the brand that you're trying to market.
Sure, that's true. And you have a good point. I've kept a file on you, Josh. I've kept everything that we have talked about. I tend to keep things electronically. And one of these days over lunch or something, we're going to go back. I'm going to bring you some of those early ideas and some of those pictures we took and everything. And it's, it's hard to believe it's, I don't know, probably 4 or 5 years ago now. But, you were never happy until you decided that this is what you wanted to do, and you joined a different firm, and then bang, you made that decision. I'm going to do it. And that's the first thing, is to make a decision. I will do it.
Yeah, it took me years. As you know, John. And I think there's a lot of people out there listening who are in the boat right now. They're stuck in a corporate job, or they're stuck doing something that really they're looking for that right time to jump off into. And the reality is there really never is the right time. I mean, you have to obviously take an assessment, self-assessment. You have to look at what stage you are in your life. You have to look at a variety of factors. But for me, it just came to a point where I thought, I just have to do this. I just can't do anything else. And I think you were very much instrumental in helping me to get to that decision. And I definitely, I was so excited to interview you, John. I forgot to even mention that you have 2 companies currently. You have a company called Absolute Max, and then you also have a company called the Q Consulting Guys, which I want to dive deep into. But before I do that, I want you to tell the audience about you, your background, your history, because I think it's very, very fascinating, and I think they'll be interested to hear it.
Well, don't hold it against me. I grew up in Wisconsin. I'm still a Packer fan at heart, although I cheer for the Colts. And I've never had a job. This is actually the truth. I've never had a job outside the media. when I was 12 years old, I had a paper route back when there were paper boys. Josh, you're probably too young to remember that. But I had a paper route. And so I loved, delivering the papers and getting to know people. That's why it took me so long to deliver papers, because I always, visited with my customers. And I guess that kind of, taught me customer service. And then when I was about 14, I got to be the audio guy at our church. I got to sit up in the control room way up in the balcony. We had a big church, and I get to run the controls and adjust the microphones. And then when I was 15, I hung around a neighborhood. We had a radio station in our neighborhood, and I hung around and bothered the general manager to the point where he hired me. Unfortunately, he gave me a broom instead of a microphone. So I was the janitor for a couple of years. Well, when he realized that I wasn't very good at washing and waxing the floors, he finally gave me a microphone, and because I was persistent, I said, let me try, and that's kind of where it started. And I was in radio through college. I was a small town celebrity during college on this rock radio station, University of Wisconsin at Eau Claire, Wisconsin. Then after I graduated with a degree in marketing and journalism, I went to WCCO in Minneapolis, which is a huge radio station, and worked in radio TV there. Also became director of operations, which part of my job was I was executive producer of the Minnesota Twins and the Minnesota Vikings back in the 80s until the early 90s. And I have to brag because I have a World Series ring from the 87 World Series, and a real one. In 91, they gave us a replica. The producers got a replica, but those were great years. And then in about 93, 94, I got this call from CBS had bought the station, and really it was one of those things that many of us have gone through. It didn't feel good with new management. Of course, they come in and they say nothing will change. Well, there's never anything further from the truth in a lot of cases. So I get a call from one of my dear, dear friends and a guy who's been a mentor forever, Jeff Smulyan, who is the chairman, owner, CEO, whatever he is, of MS Communications here in Indianapolis, headquartered here. And he says, I want you to come down and run WIBC, which I did, and did that for 14 years and consulted some of the other news talk stations in the MS chain across the country. And then the bottom kind of fell out of broadcasting in when was it? In 2005. Was it 2005? 2006. No, I'm sorry, it was 2008. So I took a buyout of my contract, and I had already been doing consulting, media consulting. That's the Q Consulting guys. And I talked to friends, and I said, Josh, you know the story. I said, do you think that I can apply my marketing skills to other businesses? And this friend of mine who was an attorney, and unfortunately she's no longer with us, but she said, absolutely you can. She said, it's all the same. All the basics of marketing are the same. And she said, I'll become your first client. So that's where it started. I started with a law firm, and I found out very quickly that everybody these days, whether you're a radio station, a law firm, or a pie shop, the basics of marketing and the needs of marketing are all basically the same. Now, there's a great difference in how you do it. There's a great difference in budgets and that kind of thing. But one thing that small business owners shy away from, and a lot of times, we'll get into this, is that they start their business and I can't afford marketing. Well, that's not true. There's so many ways to market on little or no budget. And radio stations, and I consult about 20 of them these days, nobody has money for, you've rarely seen billboards lately for radio stations. Used to be all over the place because budgets are cut. So you go back to some of the tried and true ways, including grassroots marketing, public relations, and the social media things. So, I like to say in my business, marketing shouldn't cost you money. It should make you money if you're patient.
Well, I'm sure a lot of the people in the audience are going to like to hear that, and that's absolutely true. I mean,
yeah.
One thing that has always fascinated me about you and your business and the position that you're in is that you come from a background that's based in the traditional marketing. I mean, obviously radio is a traditional kind of way for companies to market, but yet you've been able to maneuver and pivot your business now to where you see all the advantages of looking at other more streamlined ways to market, but also with the understanding that there still is a time and a place where traditional marketing still does work.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. And I really have to credit Jeff Smulyan. I worked for 14 years, and even though I don't work for him anymore, we're still dear friends. He's always been a visionary. And way back before anybody knew what the web was, he knew about the web, and we started the web in Indianapolis. And we, at first they thought, what a waste of time. This is never going to catch on. Well, history has proven differently. And I tell radio stations all the time, and I learned this from Jeff because he was a forerunner. You're not a radio station anymore. If you're just a radio station, you're going to die a slow death. You've got to be a brand. You've got to extend your radio station not only to the radio, the content to the radio, but there are all these different platforms of distribution now for a radio signal. Whether it be the web, whether it be podcast, blogs, your website. There are radio stations and companies making more money off their website now than on their over-the-air signal. So if you're not taking advantage of these platforms, both from an audience building standpoint and from a revenue standpoint, you're going to lose out. And the smart broadcasters are doing that. And you go to business, who doesn't have a website now? And so, as we get into the steps of marketing, here's what I say. It might surprise you, Josh. Besides dream, build, and grow, which I really believe is a great 3 words, the first thing that I recommend, and this may surprise you, is to do a logo. To do a logo and have a mission statement. And again, a logo doesn't have to cost you a lot of money. You can pay, there are companies that have paid $100,000 for a logo and it ends up being 1 letter. So do that. And the reason I say that is because that gives you a good feel. It gives you a good feel. And then a slogan that should be reflective of your mission statement, which you should do at the same time. What is your goal? What do you want to be? I've got a cupcake shop. I want to be known as the cupcake capital of the world, or I want to have the best cupcakes this side of the Mississippi River, or whatever. To have it be your mission and make it a simple mission statement. Then design a logo. You can do it for free online, or you can do it with letters, or you can just do it in your own handwriting and have a slogan. So it reflects kind of the spirit of what you want to do. And just, then set that aside. Some people say, I'll do a logo and I'll go into business and I'm set. Well, there's a lot more than that. And I think you know what I'm saying.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I think you've touched on so many different things for me to jump off on with what you're saying. And I think really it's a good point to talk about. Obviously my audience is small business owners. My audience is made up of people that are going to go out there and risk their own capital, risk their life savings, and go buy that franchise or go start a business. My question to you is, with all your experience in branding and marketing, first of all, is there a difference between the two?
Yes and no. It depends on who you talk to. Yes. I believe yes. Branding is being able to establish a feel for your product, a consistent feel for your product, both visually in design and many times also audibly with the sound. If you're using traditional media or non-traditional media, if you've got a sound element, it should all kind of feel the same. And if you've got a logo, maybe you have a jingle, you have a slogan, use it consistently. The best example that I give people is NBC. NBC, what's the first thing you think of when you think of NBC, Josh?
Oh, you think of their symbol.
Okay, which is?
Oh, what is it? It's the multicolored.
Okay. It's a bird.
It's the bird, yeah.
The bird. It's a peacock.
The peacock. That's what it is.
Okay, so if you look at NBC through the years, Google NBC symbol, NBC logo, you'll see the evolution of the peacock. You'll see it, kind of grainy and very kind of old style, and then way up to today, they're still using it, but they've contemporized the look of their logo. And a lot of people think that I'm working on this for a client right now. I've got an old-fashioned logo, but I just don't want to completely throw it out. Well, what we're doing is we're contemporizing it. We're keeping it the same, but we're making it look more modern. Back to NBC, some people might say, well, the NBC chimes, especially older people, you remember bum, 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 NBC.
Sure.
Remember that?
Sure.
Okay. Even today, that used to be their signal with Peacock, and then the NBC would kind of draw out. Then you'd always hear those 3 tones. Even today, if you listen carefully to the theme music of NBC and their promos and their theme songs for Meet the Press and for even NBC Nightly News, in a subtle way, you'll still hear that NBC. You'll still hear those chimes. So that's a way of branding yourself. McDonald's is the same way. It's not only, you think of McDonald's, you think of hamburger, but you think of the Golden Arches. And the Golden Arches have changed. They've changed through the years. And now McDonald's, you still see them, but they've got the retro McDonald's now. But they've evolutionized it, and they've kept that same brand. That's why McDonald's has tried pizza, and it's failed. You know why? Because they're not known for pizzas. They're known for hamburgers. So a brand is a brand. It's a good feel. It's a respectable thing.
And it's a relating thing, isn't it? I mean, to me, it's how you relate to that business.
Right.
I mean, because I think at every level, and obviously franchises are in the branding business. And at every level, it's about trying to relate to your customers, trying to take something that is an entity, that it is a company, that is a structure, and more humanize it. And, I think to me, that's what the best brands do. Obviously, when you see the check mark, you think of a Nike. Simple.
Right. Yeah, sure.
You see the Golden Arches. I think it's fascinating what you said about how they've made them more contemporary over time, because I haven't even noticed it. And it's funny when it's like you're used to seeing the same thing over and over again. So I just see Golden Arches. I just see the peacock when I think of NBC. I just see the check mark when you think of Nike and all those other great brands and logos. But so it's fascinating to me that that you say to do your logo first, and I think that ties into an important point that's more of a business point too, and that is do something that's going to make you feel good at the start, right?
Yeah.
Do something that's going to kind of keep your momentum going.
Yeah, and realize that that's not the end all. Some people say, I got a logo, I got a website, that's it, let's go. But no, that's not it. Do a logo that you love and like, you fall in love with, and that's you and reflects you, and your slogan should be the same thing. And by the way, let me just interject, too many people when they start a business, maybe their slogan is, we sell everything. Don't ever try to start a business where you want to do everything. And Josh, we've exchanged one of my favorite books is Focus by Al Reese. Focus and then expand. Focus and then expand. McDonald's started with a hamburger, and they added the fish sandwich, then they had the double cheeseburger, and then they added fries, and now they're experimenting with other things, including chicken wings. But start small and expand. And you and I have talked about this, about your business and mine. About where are you going to target your customers? Well, you're based in Carmel, so am I. Okay, maybe Carmel's the beginning, and then maybe all of Hamilton County, and then you expand beyond. So don't try to take on too much. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense, and I think it probably resonates with a large sector of my audience, because a lot of people, when they look at franchises, that's a big reason why they are looking at franchises, is they know that franchise businesses are focused businesses. They're businesses that already have systems and processes in place. So absolutely, that resonates 100%. I think it's how you're building your business, and it's how I'm building my business. And I think one thing that would be very, very beneficial for the audience is to take a step back now and just dive into the specifics, the steps that you go into when you start working with a local company. Because, and I just want to preface this by saying, one of the distinguishing factors in working with you that I found and with other people is you do take a step-by-step process, and you do take an approach, and you value local marketing, local PR. And I think there's a lot of people who don't value that. They get so caught up in worldwide social media, and they don't understand that really at the end of the day, your business in most instances is coming within a 10-mile radius of your location.
Well, the fact is, going back to radio stations for a second, I tell this, there are market sizes. There are big markets like Chicago, and there's little markets like Terre Haute. Okay? Really, conceptually, there are no market sizes anymore, because you can listen to Terre Haute as easily as you can listen to Chicago on the smartphone. And I tell media clients, smartphone is a new transistor radio. And you can hear these stations anywhere in the world. If I'm in Duluth, Minnesota, where it's 80 below zero, oftentimes with the wind chill, you should be marketing to those people, probably half their audience that goes south. Take us with you on your smartphone. So the point is there, social media is a free form of advertising that you can target locally or you can target nationally. But if we're talking about steps, I talked about, the logo, the slogan, that kind of thing. The second thing that I recommend and that I do with clients is do what I call is an idea generating session. And it's a fancy name for a brainstorm. And you touched on it already, Josh. You get a bunch of people in a room, the people that are instrumental to your partners in your new business, and also people maybe with a different perspective, your neighbors, or if it's a bakery or a restaurant, your cook. Just get them around a table, about 10 to 12 people, and throw ideas on the wall. And when I conduct these idea generating sessions, what we have is we have an easel with a great big giant Post-it note thing, and we have a bunch of magic markers. And I'll lead them into questions. I'll say, what are the words that describe your business? So we throw those words up. And by the way, the difference between what I do and a brainstorming, which makes brainstorming sometimes frustrating, is there are absolutely no bad ideas. Often you're in a discussion like this and somebody will say, well, he's the compassionate attorney. And somebody else will, the smart aleck will come up and say, yeah, but that's already being used somewhere else. So what? Throw it up on the wall. Throw it up on the wall. And at the end, and then you ask things like, what are the pros and cons of the business as it exists? And no bad ideas. And at the end of the 2.5 or 3 hours, after you take a couple of breaks, you have walls covered with Post-it notes. Then what I do is I give them 10 of these sticky dots, like yellow dots, and I said, go up and because there are no judgment of ideas until this point, go up and put your sticky dots, your 10, on the 10 best ideas on the board. And it might be a concept, it might be a word, it might be a slogan, it might be something wrong with the business, and put 1 through 10. And it's interesting because you'll begin to see certain, more dots on certain things, and it really gives you kind of a vision of what everybody thinks about maybe the beginning of a slogan. And I've, a local law firm, that's how I developed a slogan, because of some of the words that kept coming up. But it gives you some ideas, it gives you some thoughts, and it also builds team where everybody has a part to play in these ideas. And you brainstorm ways of marketing with little or no budget. That's one of my favorite ones. So anyway, you do that, and then a lot of people don't do this, and then you have to have a business plan. I think anybody knows that. You've got to project your expenses, that kind of thing. But within a business plan, you absolutely have to have a marketing plan. And you have to determine how much of your budget you're going to set aside for marketing in, the first 3 months, the first year, and then you jump ahead to long term. And it should complement your business plan. So if you think you're going to be netting, $1 million in 5 years, your marketing should be a percentage of that. So, and when you have a marketing plan, I don't care if you're buying TV, if you're doing, you have a man with a signboard walking back and forth in front of the business, give it some time. Marketing takes time. And as I've told you, Josh, and we actually did, I think, when we launched your business, be able to invest more in the first 3 months. You've got to have some kind of a marketing kickoff. It might be balloons all over town. It might be some television if you can afford it. It might be just social media, but have that as part of your plan. Simultaneous with that is get a website. And that's something that maybe, once you have this idea generating session and you get kind of a focus on what your slogan should be and what, the feel of the company is going to be, get a website built. And again, there are people who will build websites for, $30, $40, $50, $60,000. Unless you have that kind of money, start small. You can build a fairly decent website on any of the template-based website, companies, whether it be GoDaddy or iPage or something. But get something up there, because as I go along with my clients in their marketing plan, the plan that I do and a lot of people do now is the website becomes a hub, and all marketing should drive people to that hub, to the website. So
absolutely.
Absolutely.
That's so huge. And, in this day and age too, God, there's so many companies out there where you can really get a website up for virtually nothing. And then as you want to add better ability to optimize it and so on and so forth, you can do that down the road. Now, when you're dealing with a franchise, usually getting a website's not an issue, but I think what is important and what is something that you do so well is in the franchise world, one of the challenges is when a franchise opens up in a local town, in a local place, it's challenging to generate that community involvement because sometimes people think it's this outside company coming in. And I hear this quite a bit where people say, I want to go local. I don't want to go to the chain restaurants. Right. And what people I don't think fully understand is that a chain restaurant is not necessarily a franchise. A chain restaurant could be all corporate owned restaurants, whereas a franchise really is a local business because the people who are owning it are local to your community, just like if that person was going to go start a business themselves. Yep. The employees are local. But I think one of the things that is so important is for any franchise business when they start off to get going with community involvement. Can you touch upon that a little bit in your marketing?
Oh, sure. Yeah. The smart companies, the corporate companies that are chains, such as a Target or a Walmart, they're both smart in their own way. Say what you will about Walmart or, their philosophy and their ethics of business, whatever, but they're smart, as is Target, because they immediately become attached to the local community. And, if you look into a Target, they will say, we give so much back to this community. Walmart is very active. I'm on the board of Salvation Army. They're very active in giving to the Salvation Army locally. And they do that around the country. And then you have your franchise owners. I mean, is that the differentiation between a chain and a franchise owner, Josh?
Yeah, so the big differentiation is that you can have a franchise business when you have separate ownership. So a chain is going to be owned by the corporate entity as opposed to having the separate franchised ownership.
Right. Okay, so franchise ownership, again, I guess it's what the franchise, what they will allow, and this better than I, how much independence do you have? But, it can be something as simple as sponsoring a little league team or getting, at Christmas time, putting a Salvation Army kettle in front of your place of business and have your staff take turns ringing at the kettle. It could be, and I always tell clients when it's appropriate, and usually it is, even if you're an attorney, have a community page on your website. Show what you're doing in the community besides the old men in black suits kind of thing, which sometimes people still think of attorneys as. But have a community page on the website showing what you've done in the community. I mean, I know law firms here in town that that go out and help in the some of the neighborhoods and some of the food shelves, and endears them to the community. It also builds team. I mean, I know clients who have gotten together and they've helped build a Habitat for Humanity house. Not only does it build team, but it gives you that image in the community that you're really close. Plus, it's a form of marketing.
Absolutely. And, most franchises, and they're all different, and the franchise agreements address this, but they address marketing. The good ones, at least from my perspective, address it in sort of two ways. They have their traditional marketing or their national kind of advertising, depending on the size of the brand, that is a given that you as a franchise owner is going to pay a percentage of your revenues to. Right. But the good ones allow you to have the discretion to spend it on some local advertising and marketing as well. And the really good ones understand that that's most important at the outset, the company or before the company launches. It's actually this is something I would say that a lot of people don't think about. People think that their local marketing efforts begin when their doors open. And I interviewed somebody not too long ago, Katrina Mitchell, who pointed out that basically before she bought her franchise, she started working on her local marketing efforts 6 months before, and that set the stage for her to have a tremendously successful opening, which can lead to a domino effect, because as you and I both know, no matter if you're buying a franchise or any small business, your first year in business, your first 6 months, there's going to be a crunch for capital. And the better you are at setting yourself up to have bodies in your shop, if you're a retail type space, the better you are from a capital or money perspective. And so I think that everything you've touched upon is huge. And I think the big picture or the big idea from this is that I can tell you from experience, you take the time to work with companies to find out what it is that they want to be about, what it is that they're trying to project, and how they are going to make the biggest impact in the local community.
You have to differentiate yourself. Again, whether you're an attorney or a cupcake shop, you have to differentiate yourself. If you try to be McDonald's, you're going to fail. I mean, if you've got to figure out something, especially when it comes to your marketing. How are you different from the other guys? Because if you're just another commodity out there, you're probably going to fail. And that's where a plan comes in. It's amazing how many people I've worked with, that don't have a plan. Maybe they have a business plan, but they don't have any kind of marketing plan at all. They're shooting darts. A salesman comes in from a TV station or a magazine. Oh, that sounds like a pretty good idea. And you got 75% off a full-page ad. Sure, I'll take that. Without any kind of, reactionary. It's all reactionary, which is why it's good to have somebody like me, going to plug in for my company, AbsoluteMaxPR.com, by the way, come in and sort through all of this stuff. And I have many clients where I said, when the salesmen call or salespeople call, they tell them you have a marketing person and they should call me. And I kind of filter through the ones that are good and the ones that are bad. And I know, I build a marketing plan from their budget. And because the people that try to run a business and try to also do their marketing, some do it pretty well, especially one or two people shops. But, when you've got a restaurant, you're going to find out you're working 18 hours a day, sometimes even more. And when the guy that's working the midnight to 8 shift calls in sick, guess who's going to go in and, fill for him? The owner. So you can outsource some of that marketing. And it doesn't have to cost you a lot of money. I mean, I have clients that, I do a project. I have other clients that are on retainer, and they say, oh, my God, you've taken that off my desk now so I can practice law. So, I mean, I don't know anything about law. I mean, I depend on you to, tell me what's legal and what's not. But, that's why I think we complement, one another pretty well.
Well, yeah, and you got to, and you got to stay in your own lane, as they say.
Right,
and that's what you do well. And I think there's going to be, you've provided a tremendous amount of good information, I think, for the audience today. And as we wind things up here, because I feel like we could talk for hours, and I'd love to have you on the show again sometime, but definitely want to wind it up and have you tell us a little bit more about your companies, if you'd like, and then the best ways to get a hold of you. You've touched on that with your website, but if there's any other way that people can directly get in contact with you and talk about the services that you offer.
Sure. Well, my one company is QConsultingGuys.com, and that's specialized in media. So if you're a radio station or a TV station or talent, an announcer, talk show host, we can help you with that. We can help you become better. We can, do a marketing plan and, a broadcast plan and make you better if you're a radio or TV station or any of the platforms that radio and TV are on these days. What I'm focusing on a little bit more, because that's real specialized, is Absolute Max. And that's a company we're a small full-service advertising agency. And we have lower overhead, but our work, humbly speaking, is just as good as, if not better than some of the bigger people. And our overhead is low, so you only pay for what you need. I'm not dissing some of the bigger agencies because there are a lot of good ones around. But a lot of times, as a business person, when you hire a big agency, you're paying their overhead. You're paying for their videographer. You're paying for their art director. They're paying for all of that fancy space they have in downtown Indianapolis that you don't need. We work with strategic partnerships. So if you're not going to do television, you're not going to pay for that. I have a strategic partner I call in. Photography, we can do some of that, but if it's a video you need, we bring somebody in and I work with them I'll storyboard it, I'll direct it, I'll write it, I'll help edit it, and then we have somebody else shoot it. So we do everything. Web development, we'll have somebody build it, but then we do the marketing for it. We can do the writing for it. We can do print ads. We do everything an agency can do, including one of our specialties is public relations. A lot of people think they can send out a news release and get publicity. Having been in the media running newsrooms for over 25 years, most news releases go in the garbage. So you have to have somebody that can follow up and get to the right people. You have to have a good story, but I think that one of the things I'm good at is I know everybody in the media and I can twist their arms a little bit if it's a good story. So, we do it all, and we do a free consultation, and we understand small business and big business, and we can relate. So I love to talk to people. I love to deal with people, and as you know, Josh, and it's been fun to see our businesses grow through some of the things we're talking about.
Well, yeah, and thank you so much for taking the time to come on, because it's quite unusual for me, and this is actually a first where I actually know the guest on my podcast, and I can actually provide a reference and endorsement on your work and know firsthand that you've done a tremendous amount for me, and I know that you can provide a tremendous amount of help for a lot of people out there. So thanks again, John, for coming on the show, and I look forward to our next lunch together.
Hey, I think it's your turn to buy.
Absolutely.
Okay, thanks,
Take
Josh.
care.
Good luck, everybody.
Thanks for being with us today on the Franchise Euphoria podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to go to iTunes and provide a review. Also, please remember that although Josh Brown is a licensed and practicing attorney, nothing contained in this podcast should be construed as legal advice, because it is not. The information contained in this podcast is general and educational in nature, and none of it should be relied upon as legal advice. That being said, if you have questions for Josh and would like to contact him, please email him at josh@franchiseeuphoria.com. Thank you so much for listening, and we hope you tune in to our next weekly episode.